All right, here we go. We got programming exercise 3 right here. I'm starting with chat client. Same import or same import statements from the previous exercise, system socket OS, threading library. We have the same usage method or function from before. It's just going to print out the script name if somebody starts the program incorrectly. Um, Send message function takes the input parameter of a socket object. We have a while true loop. Inside of that, we attempt to assign standard input to the message object. If there is no message, that means that there's probably some sort of keyboard interrupt and the socket connection is closed. So we're just going to shut down the socket, close it, and then exit the program. Otherwise, we're going to send an encoded message in byte format over to the server. We have the receive message function, takes in the input parameter that is a socket object. We have a while true loop, try and accept, try and receive from the server a byte formatted message up to 24 bytes. If the server is shut down for some reason, that's probably when the exception would be thrown because there's nothing to receive from. And if there's no message, if the message that gets received is empty, there could have been some sort of interrupt, who knows, or an error. Then we would shut down the socket and exit the program. Otherwise, we're going to print out the message. There actually is a message to see that we're going to print it out to the screen and strip in case there's an indentation that we do not want. The create thread function takes an input parameter that is a socket object. We create a send thread that uses the send message function and throws in the socket parameter. We're going to start it up and return it. In our main function, we have, or in main, sorry, we're going to assign the system arguments to argc is pretty much just going to be the port number. If there is no port number when somebody tries to run the program, we're going to print out the usage statement, exit. All good there. I don't think there's going to be an issue in the test script with that. It was not part of the instructions. I assign localhost to host. We're going to be using that in our connection. We create a socket using socket.socket function. The first argument is AF underscore init. That's the IP4 address. And then sock stream, which is our TCP ICP, our TCP IP socket connection, which is allowing the client to connect to the server. This is how we are going to be exchanging message right here using this socket. Next line, sock opt. SOL is a socket level argument. The reuse address allows us to reuse the local host, the local address, and then one just turns on that reuse address so we can bind to the same address. We're going to attempt to connect to the host, which is localhost, as I said above, and we're going to input the address, the port number, which is currently a string, so we convert it to an integer because it needs to be read as an integer to connect. We're going to output these print statements right here. This is kind of what you did in your demonstration video, so I copied you. I take in the first input from standard input, and this should be the name if the user does it correctly. I send that name over to the server, and I say that right here, and in byte format. Next, I create a send thread. Is very similar to the previous assignment. I'm able to receive messages with the socket I just created as long as this send thread is alive. As soon as it dies, we exit the program. Let's go right on over to the chat server program. Okay, same import statements, the same usage statement. This one's a little different. I have a terminate server function. This is basically allowing me to exit the program using an interrupt. This was helping me for testing. I was having some issues shutting down the server without this, so I just added this in here. It wasn't the best fix. It was kind of a workaround, but works. As a while true loop is basically just if there is if there is a message, we're fine. But if there is an interrupt, we're going to exit the program, shut her down. We got new client. This is kind of a mess. Okay. In terms of parameters, it takes in a socket object, takes in the socket address, takes in two lists that I initialize in main. One is socket list and one is clients. I don't actually end up using address, so I don't worry about that one if you don't hear me mention it. So we have a while true loop. Inside of the loop, I'm attempting to receive messages from the other sockets, and I decode those messages. I strip them in case there is an unwanted indent. And I check to see if we are encountering a new client. Okay. So if the sock that we just received is not in sock list, that means this is a brand new socket. Okay. We're going to append it to the sock list, and we are going to be adding the name. So that is the first input that gets prompted when somebody when somebody runs the chat client program for the first time. So we append the socket and then the name. It says message, but it's the name to the clients list. Next statement is if there is a message, if there is not a message, we're gonna run through the client list and attempt to remove the client that is no longer running. That means if there's no message, that means the socket's been shut down, so we want to get rid of it. The client socket's been shut down, so we want to get rid of it from our list. So we're not trying to send a message from a socket that doesn't exist or that isn't running. So I'm going through the list in reverse order so that in case I remove an indice, it's not going to be affected. We're not going to be getting an index out of range issue. So it's a nice trick to use when you're removing from a list while you're looping through it. If sock, the one that we want to remove that has been shut down, is in the list, we're going to remove it from clients. So we input that clients are removed, and we also take it out of the sock list. So after the for loop is done, we're going to return false. That just allows us to break out of this new client. Next statement, if length of clients is greater than 1. So we go into this as soon as a client socket has been started. So as soon as our client socket has been started, we're going to check and see, if the message is not equal to client. Okay. That was kind of a duct tape fix. That was just to make sure that I was not accidentally sending off the first input after a second client had been started. Yeah, so this is just that was crucial. Or it wasn't necessarily crucial, but that was kind of a workaround just in case I happened to steal a second client that got started's name. So once we get past that, we're going to do a for loop. So I say for X in range, length of clients, we're going to assign name to, or we're going to take the name out of it. It's just so I didn't have to like in this little broadcast thing down here, just so I didn't have to write clients. X1 just made it a little prettier. If the socket is in that indice of the clients list, then we know that that is the name we need. So we have the name of the socket we're looking at. Okay. We do another loop. So we say for target in range length, the clients list. So this is now we have the name of the client who is doing the sending. Now we're going to be sending that message to the clients that are not the one that is doing the sending. So every client except for the one that is doing the sending is going to receive this message. That is what this if statement is checking. I assigned this message right here, which is how you wanted it formatted. It is the name of the socket that's doing the sending, this little colon, and then plus the message. And I had decoded the message from before, so I have to encode it again. I send that message using client's target .send. So this is taking the socket of the ones that are not the socket that is sending the message, and we're broadcasting that thanks to this little for loop. If this somehow isn't true, we close the socket. I have creating threads right here. This never gets used, so we can get rid of that. Creating threads takes in same inputs, socket as the new client, socket address, socket list clients. We're going to be creating the terminate thing I mentioned above that made it so that I could shut down the server. And then NC, this is just a new client thread, takes in all the input parameters. We start those two and return them in a tuple. We're going to go into main. We assign the port number to argc. We check to see if somebody start the program wrong. If they didn't add the port number, we're going to return the usage statement and exit. I got localhost right there, which I do not actually need because a server socket doesn't need it can just be an empty string when you're binding. So I initialize the two lists that I use above, socket list, clients list. The first thing I'm doing right here is creating a server socket. The address is IPv4, and it's allowing us for TCP IP communication. The SOL is just a socket level argument, and then the same thing. We're able to reuse the local address, and then we're turning that capability on with the 1. We're going to be binding. Okay, now we're listening for connections here. We're binding to whichever port number is coming in here, and we're listening. We are listening for up to 5 connections or something at the same time. Now I have this while true loop. I create, or right now, rather, I do not create. I attempt to create a socket, and this is what allows all the new clients to be made. So it's just constantly looking for new clients that are coming up, and then after that, I initialize, or rather, I create the terminate and the new clients thread, and this is going to continue going until, well, in your instruction video, you just said until your script ends everything. So I didn't need to worry about closing the socket, but until somebody breaks out of server. And that is my program exercise number 3 done.